Missions! The contracts of Star Citizen. The things we're supposed to do in order to make money. I think missions are really important because these are the tutorials of Star Citizen. I think the real good gameplay in Star Citizen is the sandbox, being able to go out and do whatever it is you want and just live in space and figure out how to get by, make the money, get the object, get the ship, whatever it is your desire, you figure out how to get it. I think that's the gold of this game. But the missions also seem like they're really important because when it all comes down to it, the less players have to go onto YouTube or go into some blog post to figure out how the game works, the better. So if they can come up with contracts that run you through the processes of learning those parts of the game, that gives you the chance to run some tutorials. It also gives you the chance to make some money in more straightforward ways. And I do think that players, myself included, are not the best at coming up with their own fun at times. So you just you need a little hand holding every once in a while. Sometimes you just want to hop in and do a little of this or do a little of that, or have someone tell you what to do and then do it. So I think the missions are important. Missions in Star Citizen have kind of sucked up until now. We've seen a lot of lag on them. Combat missions using these bunker locations. These have been around since 2018, since Hurston was brought into the game, and they've really been the main location for these kinds of missions since then. Even the distribution centers after coming in have not really stolen that focus from them, which has been mildly disappointing. But we're starting to see more. We have Pyro in the game now, contested zones are there, Hathor locations give you some fun to do. There are outposts in Pyro, and there are more enemies outside of these bunkers, thank God, in Stanton at least. So combat missions have always been around. Courier missions are currently out of the game, kind of sucks, but those are probably the best newcomer missions because you can just kind of ferry your way around Stanton to make a little bit of money. The cargo hauling missions are a good addition. Mining still doesn't have missions for whatever reason. Salvage has some missions, and there's a couple others smattered throughout. But the contract situation in Star Citizen isn't the best right now. I wanted to take an opportunity to go back and take a look at kind of how they planned on having missions work in this game overall, and talk about some of the mission possibilities that might be coming up soon that we still have yet to see. I swear I've covered some of these opportunities in 2 or 3 different videos, and we just keep doing it because these missions will not show up. Hey, mission team, I love you guys. You do great work, and I know your resources are not quite there. Investigation missions, though, would just, those would just really tighten my hat. I don't even know what the freaking phrase could be. All right, 6 years ago, Luke Presley was talking. We actually just covered this in the locations part, but I want this to be included here because it is important to the idea of how these missions work. So check it out.
Let's just jump into it. We only got an hour here. Current missions tend to require flying all over the star system, which, while good for keeping people moving and testing, can fatigue the player with long quantum travel durations. What's the philosophy behind having players traveling all over the place for more missions instead of having a group of missions that keep you within a single planetary system?
Always nervous about philosophy. Okay, so the philosophy going forward is that we try and make enough content to fill a planetary system to keep you there for a good long while. So we're aware, travel times are a big investment and quite dangerous sometimes as well. So what we're going to do is, I take Crusader, right? It's the first planetary system we built, and I'm sure everyone will be able to see that it's a lot more dense with content than the other planets. We want to get the other planets up to the kind of same parity with Crusader, and beyond.
All right, obviously. That is enough for this answer. I just wanted to get the idea that they want to have the planets be the planets. They want planets to planet, and for you to have to planet when you planet on them. So going forward, there are some other interesting answers in here, though.
What can you tell us about sequential missions in the game? I think we we touched on this a little bit. For example, if I take one of the FPS bunker missions on Hurston, after killing all the occupants, we expect the bodies and find clues that may trigger an additional mission after that.
Okay. There are a few things where, like, there are simple sequential missions that we're working on. I don't know if I want to go into those. I might keep it as a surprise.
The family?
Yeah, the family.
Yeah, the family.
Yeah. So there are simple ones. This one's a little more involved. Obviously, it involves spawn. It's more like a procedural thing, like we talked about before. You spawn something on them, and there's a chance that.
Not gonna lie, I don't think I've encountered a single sequential mission in the game. Like, must have just completely dropped that.
That triggers on another mission thread. We definitely want to do this. I have been planning this in a different context to taking something off of a body. I have been floating this around the directors and getting I've not got the absolute thumbs up yet, but this is a theory, right? I'm allowed to say theorize. So all ships have on them flight recorders, right?
Okay.
Right. This was a bit of a surprise. I was listening to this answer so that we could get some mission discussion. I actually forgot this comes up. This is completely out of left field. What we're about to listen to, I am not sure if still true, but this answers one of my biggest questions about how the law system in this game works. So, interesting discussion point, even if it's not directly about contracts.
Even Drake ships?
Let's say so. And when you blow that ship up, well, I should say this ship, this flight recorder records all the things that happen on board. So as a criminal, if I kill someone outside of monitored space, okay, the law doesn't know about it yet, and they didn't catch me doing it. But on the victim ship is the log for they caught me doing it, right. Basically. I was on radar when that happened. So, and if they deep scanned, they could know everyone who's aboard. Mm-hmm. And my ship has the log of every crime that I've committed. So, if I blow up the ship, it might be worth going and taking the black box and taking it somewhere that can destroy it. So that crime is gone. But then on my ship, it has the entire log of everything. So I'm protecting, not only my ship from being destroyed, because I love my ship, but if that was destroyed and the guys got the flight recorder, they could take that to a security depot, hand that in, and not only personally, they would get the rewards for every crime that I've committed. If I go and take a big bad guy out who's got loads of murders and stuff on there, I would get a nice reward from that. But he would be hit with all the crimes that have been registered against him. So
that's a pretty wild idea.
It kind of creates this little.
So you can commit crimes against people, and as long as you're not in a place where it gets detected, you won't get in trouble for it. But if security can get access to your records, they can see that you did that, and you would get in trouble for it. So you could technically get somebody in trouble for a crime they committed and didn't get caught for if you are able to commandeer their ship. Given this system, if they did that, this would be, man, if every ship had a flight recorder, the implications of that, pretty wild.
Ecosystem of a little economy even of and it's sandbox. That's what's beautiful about it. It's sandbox but can be worked into missions.
And just in case you,
so that was an interesting bit on missions. Here is, I think, one other
bartender
thing
to tell you about that shady looking guy. He answered that, yeah, where you need to convince a bartender to tell you about that shady looking guy. Yeah, just all that dialogue work.
Yeah, needs a
keep an eye out on the public roadmap, which is where you find out when all things are going in. Then once that's in, and once it's been tested, and once that's gone through its paces a bit, and then you can start developing systems that take advantage of it. So, all right, what else we got? Are there any plans for making dialogue an important part of missions? I think we've already answered that. Yeah. Yeah, like where you need to convince.
That's what we're finally starting to see a little bit more of. I think that's actually significant in these combat missions we're getting with 411. Not necessarily that the voice acting is anything amazing, but just that it is active. It is there. Like I said, combat's always been our oldest contracts. If we're seeing combat reach a bare minimum level of voice acted contracts, then I think that we're going to see that for all of the contracts over time. Hopefully over a short amount of time. But I think we'll start seeing a lot more of this sort of solidified content that's probably going to be in the game for good from here on.
A bartender to tell you about that shady looking guy. Yeah, just all that.
Yeah, this is very we don't know if this is actually going to be in the game kind of thing. Definitely wait until you hear them reconfirm stuff like that before assuming it's still in the game.
Dialogue work.
Yeah, needs a lot of planning.
Yep. Let's see. We want more missions we want more missions once you acquire a crime stat. That's not a question. There's
Okay.
like more missions. You want to go do that right now, and I'll just take the rest of the show.
Okay, yeah.
Trying to figure out how to answer that.
And we want to give you those missions. They did take time. We made one.
he's just trying to figure out how to answer that. All right. Yeah.
It was a super difficult one because we figured that people who get to crime stat 5, it's not easy to get to crime stat 5. Yeah, well, I'll roll back. Like you can go straight to a combat.
Some of us get there without even trying, Luke.
You have to be intending to get to the crime stat 5, and to stay there is a whole nother matter. You know, you get PvP bounties on you.
No, we don't.
And
not right now. We don't. Have they fixed those? Are those fixed in 411? That'd be great.
You know, all that. It's quite difficult. You get many restrictions placed upon you. So we made this crazy mission where you have to kind of go and take out the Navy. And the Hammerhead, or several Vanguard. So it's a start. We're gonna keep that up.
All right. We're gonna keep that up. I like mission talk. Now we're going to jump to something a little bit more recent. This is from 2022, and there are some interesting topics in here too where they're talking about missions, specifically investigation missions, but some of the stuff that we've been expecting to see, that some of which we have, some of which we haven't. But I think this is a nice little checkup, little midpoint talk about missions and contracts.
Elliot, you were part of a presentation about a new mission type called investigations. Yeah. That moves away from the cargo and trading missions, moves away from the combat missions that we have, and attempts to move the gameplay of the Persistent Universe towards a... how would you explain it?
It's... so when we're building stuff, and because of the scale of this game, we try to build things very modularly, and because we build very modularly, it means there can't be a lot of story injected into it, because injecting story into stuff is very difficult. So this is our way at looking not only at trying to build something modular, but also trying to inject heavy amounts of story in it to really bring the PU to life.
Okay. So right off the bat, I'm going to ask, why investigations? Of all the things that we could be doing to inject story, if that was the ultimate goal, why mystery? Like, why not science fantasy, or why not a science western or whatever? What about investigations drove us there?
So investigations are the tech that's there for them, like, already exists. So a lot of this we can push ourselves in MFT, and what that means is we can leave other teams alone to do their stuff without us constantly bugging them for a little bit of this, a little bit of that, because all the fundamentals are there. So it's something that MFT can sort of own and just push all the way, and without bugging anyone, doing anything. And it's also quite a fun thing to do. Having an investigation, letting people think, come up with their own answers, potentially talk about it, have different answers. I think it's just a fun game mode.
I appreciate the candor in that answer.
Samesies.
basically, it's if we wanted to do something else, it would require more people from outside the team and stuff like this. And you wanted to tackle a task that could be relatively self-contained within MFT.
Yes.
So that led us to investigations. Were there other avenues that you guys considered before landing on investigations?
There was a few other things that, we have this sort of, I guess, list of things we'd like to do. But we kind of landed on investigations. It was one of the things I want to push is, on my Siege video, I said I don't like hand-holding, and investigations are very much non-hand-holding, so it's, right up my alley.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
How does the division of labor work? Because you just said you want something that you can do internally without the need for a lot of external help. But is all of the mission feature team now working on this, and we're not going to get any other missions for the game? Like, describe to me the scope of work here.
So, no, investigations is purely me making, as in the technical part of making it. Along with an engineer, one of our coders. All our other designers on MFT are working on other exciting things, like Max here is also doing something else and will continue to while I build these investigations. But, sort of the other sort of divisioning up of the work, there's potentially some work on, like, say, the props team for certain things we might need, but a lot of heavy work sort of on the narrative side, because, like I said, in the CitizenCon, investigation at its core is a story.
So, let's talk scope, let's talk scale here.
Let's talk about how we still don't have these missions. I'm actually really disappointed that we haven't seen them yet, if you could tell by all my shout-outs and caterwauling. But they were pretty interesting
Also
sounding. This is kind of what they were supposed to be about. Oh, that's loud. Okay.
So the next stage in this whole process is building a pitch. We have to come up with our ideas, how we want it to work, and then we have to present it to CR, Tony, and Todd, and make sure they're all happy with it and all of our visions are aligned. So when we're building the pitch, we start off by going over the ideal experience we want for the player. We start off with the most advanced things, all the gameplay mechanics we could dream of to bring this sort of role to life as a detective. And then we have to start looking at stripping it back to see when we can release it, what's the minimum viable product for this experience.
And in the case of the investigation mission, we came up with two. So the first pitch is extremely simple, and it revolves around being able to find a definite answer, like something that is undisputable. For instance, we came up with a mission where there is a repairman that's gone missing, and you can go to his office and you can find some correspondence that will lead you to another place, which will have his work itinerary on there, and they're all crossed off until one. And if you're smart, you'll go to that location, and should you go to that location and do a little searching, you'll find his body there, and he's been electrocuted, fixing the final thing on his list. And there's your definitive ending. Whereas the second pitch, it's more about allowing the player to choose when they're done, like when they think they have solved the mystery. And the way we do this is we scatter evidence around the location and clues that lead you to that evidence. And obviously there can be red herrings in there. You can get your answer up to a credible state, which might still be the wrong answer but you can complete the mission then. Whereas if you'd have carried on digging a little more, maybe found a few more clues and followed them, you would perhaps find an indisputable piece of evidence, I did it kind of thing, that would get you the bonus for the mission. And both pitches had their strengths and weaknesses. The simple pitch, we could see how easy it was to scale, and it involved less complex narrative work. But we ultimately decided to go for the second because we liked the idea of giving the player the agency to decide when they were done.
So The funny thing about this is he started out talking about modules, and I think that part of why we didn't get these missions as standalones is because maybe they just wanted them to be modules that could go into the other missions we already run, but we haven't seen that either, and they don't talk about them. So I just don't know what to think of these investigation missions. But at that time, they said they were in prototyping phase.
So we're in the prototype phase with the investigation mission, which is more important than ever because it's such a complex mission and we need to ensure that it's scalable and that other designers can make their own mysteries with it.
With the pitches, we can now prototype and sort of get that gameplay feel and see which one we want to explore more for the player's experience. Some of the hardest points of this are going to be the scalability of it. An investigation at its core is a story, so the story should always be at the forefront and the focus.
So the first stage of prototyping was to prove that we could make it like a mystery happen in the most restricted location we have, which was like a derelict. So this kind of interplay between the crew of it. From there, we're going to expand so that it takes into account more locations and uses all of the evidence retrieval interactions that we currently have. For instance, like you can kill a guy and get information off him, you can find a corpse, get information off it, you can loot a box, get information off it, and then we'll be
That actually sounds a little bit like how they started to include data chips, security keys, and other stuff on characters to be able to retrieve things from. But that might have already been something they were doing at this time, 2022. We had things like Xenothreat going on. But ultimately, this is, I think this whole segment and idea is probably heavily changed from what we're seeing here, and something that they're trying to incorporate in a different way into the game. That's what I can hope for, at least at this point.
In the newer ways of getting information off of things. We're looking into using the med gun to find the name and cause of death of people, and we're looking into being able to find the mobiles in an inventory and download data from it.
One of the hardest things that we have to figure out is the story. The investigation will live and die by its story, so we work very closely with the writers to try and figure out what kind of story we want to tell, what kind of clues we want to give, and then after that point we look at sort of what obstacles we want to put in your way, keypad locked doors, enemies, traversal puzzles, things like that.
The main challenge for creating this mission is ensuring that the player has enough guidance to complete it without putting mission markers on everything. It is supposed to be about them searching, figuring clues out for themselves, and finding the answer themselves.
We want you to still feel like that detective, but ensure that we're giving you enough information in the ways that we can.
And we're working with the UI designer on the new mobiles, which should really help with this.
All right, so investigation missions, still not really anywhere to be seen, unfortunately, but that was at least one of the things that they were working on at the time. We could find a couple others. June 22nd, 2023. If I do a Star Citizen monthly report search for, let's say, March 2023. And let's see. So in March, Mission Team was working on salvage contracts. Okay. The narrative team worked closely with the various design team owners to further develop mission text for several upcoming missions, including salvage, investigation, mining, and some new ones that have yet to be announced. Now, this is March of 2023, right? So we just listened to talk about investigation missions from around that time. We're about to hear them talk about salvage missions from around that time. You're going to see that literally right here. And some of those other missions that they're talking about are going to pop up here in this Inside Star Citizen mission. What I will never understand is what the actual happened to the mining missions that they're talking about here. Where did they go? Why did they never appear? Is it because of the whole crafting thing? Is it because of the resource qualities? Is it because they just got busy? Is there something specific about mining? I don't know. And it's interesting because I think that like that could be a real helpful thing for people, especially now with the Golem coming out, to be able to get newcomers into that kind of gameplay quickly. Don't see any other reports of that back at the time. But in 2023, they were working on mining missions, and then they disappeared. I don't know why. Yeah, the missing persons missions are okay, but not quite the investigation that they wanted to do, I think. So here is talk about the salvage missions.
You buy the
that they're
contract
building.
from a contract broker, and it's just a transaction. You buy the rights to salvage, and you can just salvage at your own leisure. There's no risk. So we wanted to add a bit more variety. The illegal ones, there's a timer with enemies, but once you get rid of them, like, that's it. So we added the cover-up missions.
It wasn't because of the saddlebags not working, because this was all done before the cargo refactor. The idea of needing to remove the saddlebags wasn't a reality at this point. It was going to be a year after this, but I don't know if that would have been enough to then stop them from developing the gameplay itself anyways. So this was salvage stuff. Then they talked about some Crusader missions coming.
Form Brushwood, Heartmoor, and building those, we essentially got all of the building blocks required to expand Crusader even further.
We made Inspiration Park, which is a whole collection of 4 platforms and a whole bunch of buildings. Then we started doing platform infiltration missions on them. The problem with that is that every time a mission location is used, it can't be used by another mission at that point. It's kind of reserved. So if 2 people do that, that's already 6 buildings out of the rotation, which limits a lot of the buildings. So what we decided is to have several more of these platform parks.
We really just wanted one location that would be for siege. We intended to copy and paste those all over the place in new formations. And that would mean that the siege islands would just be for siege, so that the event and the missions don't have to share the same location. We knew we could then like take those islands, reconfigure them, and then just like place them all over Crusader.
Using multiple locations around Crusader spreads the players out more, which helps the performance. And we kind of wanted to use the planet itself more as well.
I mean, this is like, there is a level of content that you can get around Microtech and Hurston that is woefully underdeveloped around Crusader and ArcCorp at this point. And it's because those planets are unique. One's a city and one's clouds. The fact that the only ground combat missions we had going in Crusader have now been removed for this long is a little bit despicable, because you're just getting more and more limited as to where to go for that kind of content. And then we already had it in Orison. I really hope that these come back soon, because these are actually kind of fun. And as of right now, like, if you want atmospheric FPS gameplay in Star Citizen, you're basically stuck either going to Microtech or Hurston. You're not going to be able to go to like a moon for it or go to Crusader for it. ArcCorp doesn't have their own building interiors or anything. So it's a little bit of a bummer that these missions aren't here, but I did appreciate that we saw some improvement in the FPS mission options with this over the freaking bunkers and stuff that we were doing before. Any idea why they got removed? No. Performance, probably.
The intent was to run Siege for 319, but unfortunately we weren't able to hit that. We ended up in a very awkward position where we had disabled the ability to have the current missions that went out on those islands in 318 available in 319, and we also didn't have the other islands placed. So we just had to turn those missions off completely until we get these new floating islands. So we made the decision to...
And then they came back, and now they're off again.
To add more islands all around Crusader. It allowed us more freedom, like we can tell different stories.
That's the kind of stuff I want to see happen because server meshing is now in the game. All right, here were some additional improvements they made to bunker missions that we were running already. We know all about those. So let us jump forward to a mission that we still haven't seen in the game as well. This is a weird one. This is another very weird one, guys. No talk about what happened to this or why it never showed up or what the heck's going on with it, but this was an interesting mission type they wanted to bring to Crusader. in addition to just help with the FPS combat in a place where there's no ground. Now that I'm thinking of it, it probably is a performance thing. Just all of the missions in Crusader disabled because of performance. But with server meshing, I expect them to come back, and maybe they just need to make them for the new mission system, but at least let us know.
One of the things farther ahead that we're working on is barge heist. It's basically taking what we know to be popular and fun in this game, so something like Jump Town, but we're making it have a finite resource and a much more interesting location.
What we're doing is allowing players to buy in information similar to how some of the salvage contracts work. And from there, they get the information about where this cargo barge is, owned by Crusader, and happens to be just in the middle of this heist situation where the Ninetales are taking it over and they're trying to take all this stuff from Crusader.
It's the barge that we use in Siege of Horizon, heavily modified, so there'll be lots of entrances and exits. What's great about using the barge is that we can put it anywhere on Crusader, you know, far away from the landing zones and anything that, you know, may cause performance to dip. So there should be no performance impacts.
We've placed a terminal, a cargo terminal, inside of the container interior of the barge. And when players find this terminal, they can turn it on to open various containers using different kinds of ID codes found in the environment.
Basically, you unlock several cargo containers belonging to different companies, and different companies have different items in there.
So hopefully, players will learn which containers might contain what types of materials based on the brands, right? Crusader Industries is transporting completely different types of loot than maybe, say, ArcCorp is.
The cargo containers open all in different rooms around that location. You're fighting over every single box, trying to hold down like a room. There's no way you can hold down the entire thing unless you hold all the entrances. The location is so like so much of a maze. You'll have people stumbling in and out of it, and lots of people wondering, you know, oh, is this person here to steal a box, or is he just trying to get through to the next room?
What we really wanted to achieve with this is give the players complete freedom of which side to take. You don't take a contract from Crusader asking for help, or from Ninetales wanting you to help them to take something.
In future, when we have reputation-based hostility and you can make friends with these guys, they will be your cover. So I can see plenty of exciting PvP action that's going to come from this mission.
Reputation hostility.
At some of the
Someday. All right. That is indeed a brief look at some of the missions that they were working on at that time. But as we covered here, some of them haven't shown up. Not really sure why. Now, for the last part of this talk, kind of look at the current state of missions and where they're headed and what's going on with them. I wanted to touch on a talk from just last year where Elliot and Eric go into some detail about how contracts will work from players to player, from game to player, how the economy will tie in, and contracts in general. And then from here, we'll briefly touch on the missions that we're seeing in 4.1.1, which is why I wanted to have this talk in the first place, and then we'll move on to ship talk. So here are some interesting things. I'm going to try and jump around here to some of the more interesting stuff. That was talked about back then. This is the first one.
Question says, can we?
This is pretty. This is kind of a callback to the new additions in 4.1, actually, and these new collection missions that they're coming up with.
Use our own commodities or commodities that we have found to complete these hauling missions?
No. No. Not like, so the hauling missions as they are, these are tracked, contracted goods. So this company has already owned these commodities and they're asking you to transport them from A to B. However, what that open question is kind of alluding to is more resource gathering missions. So we will have missions where you are asked to just get 10 copion horns, or this refinery just wants
X amount of, raw iron, and the player can get them by their own means. For example, you could, go mine it yourself. You could pirate it and use it for the mission and things like that. So, in the future, we will have missions that allow you to get the commodities via your own means.
And you just go to Wish and get the Wish version of whatever you're supposed to be delivering on the cheap.
On the cheap.
Okay, but not in 324.
No.
All right. How will players earn reputation and progress in the hauling mission?
Yeah, those are in with Wicklow. So that was actually a fairly quick turnaround as far as this conversation goes when we're looking at missions. But I was happy to see that be a part of what they were doing when they brought in the 4.1 stuff. This is an interesting one for you, Hustle.
It's a statement. Don't make a theme park, CIG. Oh, okay. So obviously making missions and everything, it's essentially adding rails to what's supposed to be a sandbox game. This is a forever consideration for you. We hope that CIG don't just put all the gameplay on rails and stop us from making their own emergent opportunities. There's not actually a question there. That's just a statement.
It's just a statement, yes. So I guess the person doesn't like theme parks. Theme parks are meant to be fun, so I guess you don't want a fun game, right? No.
We hate theme parks,
no,
dude.
How we see missions
Roller coasters and funnel cakes suck.
is missions are, and I know people will take the piss currently, but missions are meant to be more narrative-driven stories in the game. But we also use them as a vehicle to introduce players to the more emergent aspects of the world. So the hauling missions are meant to show players a connection of commodities between locations, which then, now they know that this place trades in iron and this place wants iron, and they can look at the commodity terminals and goes, well, that sells for this much and that buys for this much. I could actually make a profit if I ignore the mission and just do it without the mission. That's what it's there for. It's to expose a gameplay route. It's something we found very successful when we first did Salvage. And Thorsten Lehman loves me for this, but when we first did Salvage, and we put out the hull scraping, in its first release, we saw some people play it, but it wasn't as much of a boom. But when we released the missions, which acted as an easy way to show the players the Salvage gameplay, we saw a huge spike in people playing Salvage. And that's just generally how we look at missions. It's to introduce players to the sandbox nature of our game easily, so then if they wish to break away from missions, just start doing sandbox things, they can.
This is a look at player contracts. I think this is a relatively interesting question and answer, because this falls in line with something else we talked about just a couple months after this at CitizenCon. Looking at this screen here.
Only really.
You keep in mind how these ratings are meant to look, the fact that you get a reputation and rating based on the specific type of gameplay you're doing. So if somebody sends out a beacon for refueling, that rating will be considered. If somebody sends a beacon out for a combat escort, that rating will be considered. And these will work for service beacons, I think, that go towards the game, but also guide beacons. So another player can put out something essentially to give you a mission to follow to help them do something, and then you would pay them and rate them based on how they did. And that's kind of what he goes on to talk about here in this answer.
Player contracts and job boards. Will players ever be able to set up contracts to have cargo or items hauled by other players?
So we do have player beacons. And I know
That's right.
what that current state of that is, but that
What
is
it, Nick?
a
What is
system.
the current state? Go ahead, admit it.
Worked perfectly.
AK, you in chat, dude?
It's a feature, but that's something which we. It's like the economy. It's
Non-existent? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Carry on, Nick.
Okay.
Yeah, this is pre-recorded, and if that still makes it into the show, know that I don't value my job. That'll probably still be in the show. I mean, it's just look. We're just going to leave that in because I've said it before. We have the same conversations you do. The same exact things you guys talk about, the same concerns that you have. We say all the same things, just 12 weeks before you do. We recognize that some of these systems still have work to do.
I bet you didn't say gobbledygook. You guys think he said that 12 weeks ago? That would be freaking crazy. If there's a post of him saying that online from 12 weeks ago, I would probably quit.
Still need love. I'm going to ask Elliot about box missions, so don't you worry. So don't take our candor about it as us not caring about it or us not thinking it's important. It's just, there's a very long list of things that we're doing for Star Citizen that we still have to do, that we still have to fix, and that's just us being very aware of it. And sometimes you just have to kind of go, yeah, we know.
If we don't, we'd all be depressed, right?
Yep.
Gotta have fun to make fun.
So just take it as us being like you. And we understand it. We're aware of it. It's on the list. And just all we can ask for is patience while we try to get to everything. All right. Continue with whatever we were talking about. I've forgotten now. Player context.
So to answer the question, Elliot, the beacon system is something which provides for players to contract other players, and it's a system we will be looking to expand upon in the future. And personally,
that's this. So don't know where it is. Don't think it's going to come anytime particularly soon. They're just starting to work on like the chat app and stuff, but this is a step towards the social kind of systems that they're trying to develop.
I think that this side of the economy is fundamental, given that we are having a hybrid economy. So player-driven systems.
Yeah, that's Space Tomato. Clip it. Fundamentally said.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. It's.
I wonder if he knew how many times I would be going over that in a stream or clipping it for some video. It's in the middle of such an important answer that we end up keep coming across it. I'm like, I clipped it. I did it.
I don't think I've been, like I said, I'm going on 10 years here now. I've had 100 conversations with Tony and with everybody else who's involved with this stuff. And I cannot overstate how important the player-driven aspect of our economy is to us. It's just things like the player beacon system and stuff. It's just waiting for the eye of development, Sauron, to turn its eye back to it, resources to free up, new technologies to work on. A lot of this stuff, it's like, you don't want to put in a whole bunch of work when you know this other work that you also have to do is going to invalidate that. So we're forced to kind of sit there and grin and bear certain aspects of this while we're waiting for other new technologies and other new works to come online. But it is, fundamentals are a really good word for that, Nick. Thank you. All right.
So another question I think is kind of important for us to go over here. This isn't as important to contracts. This goes back towards that supply and demand whole Star Sim simulation thing. I don't remember what the answer to this is because there's just so many questions everywhere. But I do want to hear what they have to say about this.
What happens to the hauling mission that nobody takes?
Actually, I'll play both of these because this kind of all goes back to the simulation.
Generation, Star Sim / Quantum was always supposed to dynamically generate missions in response to the activities of players and Quanta. Is this still the plan?
So the short answer is yes. And when we are ready to talk more about that, we absolutely will.
That's what's killing me because they still haven't talked about it. When?
We'll be the first to know about it. And I mean, the reason we're doing all this now is because we don't want you to have to wait any longer for this kind of gameplay. But everything we're doing now, even though we're doing it manually, we'll be able to plug into the implementation of StarSim when it's ready. So we're not wasting work, but we just wanted to get this gameplay in so that you don't have to wait any longer.
Right.
But yes, the short answer is yes.
You can make a good point. All that work to spec out StarSim, to design it, to figure it out, that's there. So we can so while it's still hardening and becoming ready, we can sit there and say, okay, well, this plugs into this plugs into this. We just fill in our own values based on like the spreadsheets and stuff that you showed on SCL last week. And so we can still build missions without having to wait for it. And then when it's ready, plug right in.
So we can see that from the missions that they're adding. All of these missions are fairly generalized and they could be added to different factions in different locations.
To the hauling mission that nobody takes. It's a good question.
Elliot,
I like that question.
You want to answer that? I think there's a timeout, right?
Yeah. So missions, as they currently are, they generate based on eligibility and then they stay around for an amount of time. So if there's a cargo hauling mission, it will stay around for, I don't know, like maybe 30 minutes. And if no one accepts it, it shuts itself down and we'll try generate a new one. There might be changes to that are in the future with maybe StarSim that Nick might want to talk about or might not want to, depending. But right now they just shut down and then they'll regenerate after a period of time.
Talk about StarSim.
So yeah, what missions are available and what opportunities they present to players is a balance that we're going to have to judge as we go with StarSim, because it is a hybrid economy, and that means that player driven is really important, but we don't want parts of the universe to be abandoned or to lack input if there aren't enough players there. So it will be player driven, but it will be system maintained.
Gotcha. I feel like the timer question was probably a question more for Yorit. Yeah, Yorit couldn't join us here this week. He had a well-deserved and well-scheduled vacation this week. So when we had to reschedule last week's show, it was really disappointing that he wasn't going to be able to do this. But we didn't want to wait any longer. So
I mean, I've got the data open. I can give you a time, but I don't want to because then everyone's going to hyper focus on. You said it'd take 13 minutes.
yeah. Oh my gosh, a number early in development that never
Could
changes.
you imagine? No.
All right. The other thing, this is actually a topic I want to touch on today, but we'll do this next week. Risk versus reward, kind of a big thing. Let's see. Was there anything else here? No, most of this is actually pretty much, we know this stuff. We can look at something like this.
Miners, will there be missions to sell what we mine to something like the distribution centers so that they can then be hauled away with other hauling missions?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, this is the resource gathering type missions, so we will have missions that require them. It says, I know the question is, do miners, like you can steal those goods, you could buy them from somewhere it's really cheap and bring them over, or you can mine them. It's a choice that I want to give the players, so you can choose whatever gameplay you are interested in for this mission. But yeah, we're going to have missions where you have to bring resources to a location, and then naturally that location would then take those resources, produce something, and then another location would then consume what that location produces, and that makes the what do you call it, the hauling sort of mission. Currently, our hauling missions are very static. They're not reactive based on the location's inventory amount. That's something that is something more on the side of like StarSim, because it that will keep track of sort of things like that, so it knows what to generate and what not.
This question just says,
All right. That's about it in terms of mission stuff. And that's really like the overall, interesting song. That's the overall look into missions that I had. I just wanted to look at kind of where they were coming from, the ideas they had behind how they wanted to develop them, and sort of where we are now. Currently, they are releasing new missions on, I would think, most patches, it seems. Like, they're doing them in interesting ways. They're releasing content, so these missions are being recycled. But the specific version of that mission isn't necessarily hanging around. So like Supply and Die was the first version of resource gathering missions, which have now been moved to Wicklow and Rayari and are being brought in as collection contracts. So that's just like one example, I think, of how they're creating missions that aren't necessarily wasted effort because that mission can be used somewhere else, but the specific application that mission gets might be a little bit wasted. That was my point when I was talking about last year how people view dynamic events, or what they have as dynamic events right now, as development going towards something that could go somewhere else. And I'll tell you what, I think that's like one of my most disliked videos. I got so many comments of people saying that I was like a doomer and like just trying to start drama and stuff, all because of that single line about people thought dynamic events were taking effort away from other more packaged content. And I still stand by that. I'm not going to say that is true or not, but I do think that that is a big reason why people don't like dynamic events. And I think that what they're doing right now with this is way better for longevity than what they were doing for the dynamic events. This stuff is stuff that can always hang around in different forms, in different locations. And dynamic events can be like that too, but there's just so much effort into a specific dynamic event that if you wanted to do Xenothreat and Pyro, you'd have to do a whole bunch of it over. And I think that what they're currently doing is a little bit better. Anyways, with 4.1.1, we are also seeing... Oh, this is 4.1. With 4.1.1, we are also seeing these new combat missions come in. And as kind of falls in line with what we've been hearing, these missions use a little bit more narrative. They have voice acting. They are meant to drive you through the scenarios rather than just have you do these over and over again. Like Elliot was saying, this is meant to take someone who kind of knows how to shoot their ship and go through these missions till they find something they really like, and then try and do that stuff in the sandbox, going out to Pyro and finding people to fight. I think this is a great way to get people a little bit better into combat without trying to make them do bounties, which have really, really unexplanatory descriptions. Just have you flying out to random places, not really knowing what you're doing. This has instructions. This follows you along. It has progression. It's a start. It's a start. I don't think these are the most interesting missions, especially for people like you guys who are obsessed with this game and already doing the combat. But we've got to think about all the thousands of people that are going to be joining us after now. And this will make a big difference in terms of playability. It also does a good job of just fleshing out more ship combat missions. I think that we'll see more of these in the next update. Like, I think every single update this year is going to be bringing some type of content that gives some players a little bit more to do. And if you can get a bunch of updates like that, then eventually everybody starts having more to do, which is nice. Okay, this I should have covered.
How many?
And I didn't. A little bit of talk about how missions are going to work in this, though, because this is actually a really key part. Thank you so much for pointing this out, Adnan. This is a really key part of how they're developing Star Citizen to get to 1.0.
Let's talk more about the guilds that Rich mentioned. First, a quick recap. Guilds act as a governing body for clusters of professions and factions with a reputation and progression system that will offer rewards the more you work for them. And I want to call out two things. One, I'm not going to have time to dive into all of the missions that you're going to see on this board, but just know that every mission type is either in the 1.0 roadmap or already in production.
So we are seeing missions that fit into this format being delivered this year. So they're clearly wanting to push this into the game. And I think this is a big part of that announcement we saw last year, I think. Early last year, and the narrative team was basically like, hey, we're going to start putting more of our stuff into the game rather than in these blog posts. And I think this is a product of that.
And second, we're also looking to move missions away from the Moby Glass whenever possible. Sure, it will always be an easy way for us to get additional game content in, but we want you talking with people. So...
Still not quite there yet. We're still talking, the first mission giver that came in is through an MFD. It's close. You're getting there. I think we will get a physical mission giver in here soon, though.
So to aid that, we're going to be adding characters to represent the factions that you'll be working for that will help sell their personality. Now, some, they'll still interact with you via the written word, but some will call and check in on your performance. And others, you may have to meet in person from time to time. So, let's walk through them. Here we have the first guild that Rich showed, the United Resource Workers.
So we've already seen these people. They started at them, and we know Shubin's in there. We went over this last week. We don't have to cover all of this. We're here for the mission talk.
United Wayfarers Club, and more. Next, you have one of the oldest unions in the UEE, the Interstellar Transport Guild.
And we are doing missions with them. Nothing really with the racing guild so far. We're doing retrieve and research type missions for Rayari as well as Wicklow. And then High Point Wilderness Specialists are actually in there, I realized. They are the ones who offer some of the hunting missions. So they're filling this out. And that's where some of these other missions are coming from. Obviously, with the ones that we're talking about today, Mercenary Guild's a little more involved.
But for our combat guilds, they operate a little differently. See, these two are diametrically opposed to each other. So once you pledge allegiance to one, the other marks you as an enemy. On the lawful side, we have the Mercenary Guild.
So we're already doing, in terms of combat pilot, we're scanning area, we're scanning objects, we're defending location, we're patrolling, we're defending VIP, we're destroying objects, we're killing all, and I think we're recovering item. We actually have a large amount of these contracts already in here just from these last couple of updates, but obviously they need to be fleshed out a lot more. Just the fact that they actually exist is, I think, a good balance. Kill VIP on the Bounty Hunters Guild is also a thing. What we don't really have too much of yet is the operative FPS stuff. Scan objects, map locations, investigate, access data. This is a very interesting sounding section of contracts, but we're not seeing that yet. We do see some of this soldier FPS stuff in terms of defend VIP, defend location. Those are here, but for the most part, combat pilot is really where it's focused, and this is where we're seeing 4.1.1 also add on to. So this stuff's happening.
They represent factions like Eckhart Security, the Bounty Hunters Guild, and even some military contractors. So whether you're pulling together a team of specialists to go assault a ground base, hunting down an elusive criminal, or putting together a recon run to drum up some intel, Mercenary Guild's got you covered. On the flip side, we have the Council. Now, this is a shadowy group comprised of representatives from various gangs, syndicates, and outlaws who mandate criminal activity throughout.
This kind of exists. This is just the other side of the same coin. And I won't say that it's super in-depth or anything, but it's getting there. And that's the little bit that we should have touched on before. A lot of this mission development and talk and tech is going into that 1.0 vision, but we get to enjoy it right now while it's being developed. And we'll keep covering it as more and more gets added every update.